The next steps are rounding and backing and spine lining. All these steps are designed to give structural integrity to the book. Rounding is to put a round shape into the spine of the book. You gently tap the spine of the book with a hammer as you use your fingers and thumb to pull the upper sections away from the spine. If you put a little bit of moisture on your fingers, it helps to pull the sections forward as you tap the spine with a hammer. Most books say to aim to get a third of a circle into the shape of the spine, but for smaller books I think this is excessive, so maybe more of a quarter. The shoulders are 1.5 times the board thickness, so the board that I'm using is 2 millimeters, so I'm going to put 3 millimeter shoulders on the book. Backing is the process of putting shoulders on a book. It uses some specialized bookbinding tools. Backing's usually done in a lying press, but I'm going to use my finishing press on legs so I can do it on the bench and film it easier. Backing boards, which are these wedge-shaped boards, and then a hammer with a dome face to it. Put the text block between the backing boards. A little bit of moisture helps hold the boards in place, lined up with the 3 millimeter marks that you've made. Put that into the press. You really need to make sure that the boards are aligned with the mark for the shoulders, so you need to fiddle around with a little bit, a fair bit of tapping and back and forth. Iterations will get everything aligned nicely. Once everything's aligned, do the press up tightly, and this is where the lying press has an advantage. You can put a lot more pressure on it. With this little finishing press, I don't want to damage it by over tightening it, but you can see how the boards have already started to push the shoulders out on the book, and then using the hammer lightly at first, just go along from the head to the tail, starting to tap just away from the center of the spine. As the sections start to roll over, you can start to move towards the edges of the book, but don't hit the spine right in the center. The center section you want to have standing vertically, and you don't want it squashed. As the sections start to fold over, you can start applying, hitting it slightly harder and moving towards the edge until the outer folds are almost folded over at a right angle. When starting out with bookbinding, this may be one of the trickiest steps to master. I'm not sure if anyone masters it, and it's not made any easier by the fact that you normally start with a thinner book, and thinner books are harder to back than thicker books. Once the outer sections are close to being at a right angle, you can take the book out. Now you have to start protecting these shoulders that you put a lot of work into, so always put it on the edge of the bench or on some scrap board. But the final step to backing is to crisp up these outer sections with a bone folder. Just use some force to push them into a board to get the shoulders nice and crisp and as close to a right angle as you can. The next step is to put end bands or headbands on the book. End bands used to be sewn into the text block, like that book. But in the 19th century, with the introduction of case bindings, headbands became decorative. So they were pre-made and then just glued on. So you have to make a decision about the colour of the headbands. So you have to know what the colour of the cover is going to be. I've chosen that black metallic cloth for the spine and corners, and that scrapbooking paper for the cover paper. So I've picked a sort of fairly neutral coloured headband to match that. So I just put it into my finishing press just to hold it while I use PVA to cut a couple of pieces of headband and glue them at the top. You just want the headband to extend past the top, the head of the text block and the tail. If the headbands extend a little bit past the shoulders, you can trim it up later, and a little dab of PVA on the ends will stop the cloth from unraveling. The next step is to line the spine with a loose weave material called Scrim. It's also known as mull or super. You cut a piece that fits between the headbands, fits between the cloth of the headbands, and extends out about 2 or 3 inches either side of the shoulders of the book. I just slit it with a sharp knife. Once the scrim is cut to the correct size, put a layer of PVA over the spine of the book. At this point, you cover the tapes because the book is now rounded and backed, so you don't need the tapes to be able to move any longer. Once the spine between the headbands is completely covered in PVA, then press the scrim down over, or pull it down over the spine. Once the scrim's in place, you can rub it down underneath some rubbing down paper, which is just some sort of non-stick paper like baking paper, to really make sure that the scrim is keyed in place, though you will be coating it with another layer of PVA soon. The final lining on the spine is a piece of craft paper. Make sure that the grain is going head to tail. Cut it to the exact width from shoulder to shoulder. Full length, you can cut it longer than the spine and paste it down over the end bands, which helps support the end bands, though I often find it a bit of a pain in the neck to trim behind the end bands, so I'm going to cut it to length prior to pasting it on, so I don't have to deal with that. Wet the outside of the paper, which will cause it to curl in towards the dry side, which helps glue it onto the spine. Apply another layer of PVA to the spine, this time going up over the headbands. It will take a fair bit of PVA this time because there's a lot of little gaps in the weave of the scrim. And then put the craft paper lining in place. There's a bit of unevenness in the spine, and this paper will tend to crease a little bit, so again rub it down under a piece of rubbing paper and try and work those little creases and out and try and get it nice and smooth. I thought I was done, but having a look at it in a different light, I think I can do a better job, so I'm going to go back and try and work those creases out. The final thing to do with the lining is to trim up the scrim and tapes. So just push the scrim down into the shoulders with the bone folder. You want to trim the scrim to about 25 millimeters wide, so just measure 25 millimeters with your ruler, and make a couple of light marks and draw a line, and trim that up with a pair of scissors. It looks neat to trim up the ends of the scrim with a little diagonal cut like that, and then cut the tapes off to about the same width as the scrim, and again cut them off at a bit of an angle. I've been told that helps stop the fabric unraveling, and I've also been told that it's just aesthetic. In the next video we'll move on to making the case.